Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Dana Shepard, the Associate Commissioner for the District of Columbia Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking's Risk Finance Bureau, and Joanne Wallace, the President, CEO, and Board Chair of NLADA Mutual Insurance Company for the Risk Retention Group. So Joanne, tell us about the National Legal Aid and Defender Association. What is the organization exactly, and how do you work to help people with legal services?
Sure. NLADA is a mission-driven membership association. NLADA are short for the National Legal Aid and Defender Association. That's a mouthful. It's America's oldest and largest nonprofit association dedicated to providing legal assistance for people who can't afford counsel. We have a justice gap in our country, meaning that the need for people to have legal assistance when they're facing life-altering circumstances, such as losing their home or being accused of a crime, that need is much greater than the resources that we have available to provide services to them. NLADA works to expand and improve access to legal assistance for people who can't afford it by providing advocacy, innovation, education, training, and technical assistance for equal justice advocates across the country, especially civil legal aid and public defense advocates.
And Dana, your agency works with Joanne's organization. You have an affiliation. Can you describe that and talk about what it's like to work with each other?
Yes. So our organization, we are responsible for regulating insurance companies among other financial services companies. And as you will hear, Joanne and her organization decided to form a captive insurance company last year. And so she came with her representatives to my department, and we worked with her to set up the captive insurance company. And then we have this ongoing relationship where we regulate the company.
And we're going to talk about the idea of forming a captive in a moment. But before we do that, can you share some information about your organization's previous insurance program? Just explain a little bit about what that is.
Sure. NLADA has been dedicated to providing low-cost, affordable insurance products for its members for quite some time. But in 1994, the insurance program was restructured, and they created a separate nonprofit to be an advocate in the industry for NLADA's equal justice members across the country. At that time, as a result of that advocacy, the per attorney insurance costs for professional liability products went down by 50%, which was remarkable. And in fact, today we hear from some of our policyholders who are directors of legal aid programs or public defense programs that the rates that they're paying for insurance today are lower than what they were paying in 1994 when the insurance program was created in its modern form. Up until the formation of NLADA Mutual Insurance Company, the program relied on working with commercial carriers. And that meant, though, that there was always some tension between the NLADA equal justice mission and the carrier's profit motive, which limited the program's ability to fully be responsive to the members' needs. Now, as NLADA Mutual Insurance Company, we have much more control of the business.
And that gets into what I wanted to ask you next, which is why did NLADA decide to form a captive insurance company? And also, what goals did you have for the captive? What goals did you establish for the captive when you got into the idea of initiating that?
So we saw over time that our ability to meet the insurance needs of the equal justice community of advocates across the country was directly correlated to our control over decision making on their behalf. So our ultimate goal in forming the captive was to better support NLADA's mission and its national membership by creating the insurance program as a greater asset to support things like training and technical assistance, as well as obviously providing the essential services that it needed. But our penultimate goals were to have increased control over all aspects of the business: pricing, policies, claims, and related services. We wanted more flexibility in order to respond, to be able to develop specially curated training and risk management programs for our members to help them manage risk and reduce losses.
And at some point you decided that the nation's capital here in D.C. was the place to form a captive. Can you tell us why D.C. was the location for you? And I want to ask that same question to you, Dana, as well. But first, Joanne, why D.C.? Why is it such a great place for this?
We chose D.C. because of its reputation as a leading jurisdiction for captive insurance companies, and I can tell you, based on our experience, that reputation was well deserved, and it really is because of Dana's leadership, his expertise, the expertise of the staff there. You know, D.C. has a separate division or section of the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, DISB. That focuses on captives, and so it's a very welcoming jurisdiction for this type of company. You know, during the application process, Dana's team there, they do a really thorough analysis, making sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted. And it was a learning experience, quite frankly. They are so knowledgeable that it was really helpful and informative and educational for us.
So Dana, what do you think? Why is D.C. a good place to set up a captive like that?
Well, when companies look to form a captive, there's really two things they look at. Primarily, the most important thing is the quality and knowledge of the regulators. We have a team of 10 people in my unit that all we do regulate captive insurance companies. Mm-hmm. With the exception, I believe, of 3 of us, we all have more than 20 years of experience regulating insurance companies. And so we do, if I can say so myself, pretty good job at that. We're very, very knowledgeable when it comes to doing that. Second, it's important that the jurisdiction have a good law. Unlike commercial insurance, captive insurance is very innovative, very creative. There are always emerging risks. The markets change from time to time, and so the law needs to be flexible enough to accommodate the needs of organizations like NLADA, and we believe we're able to do that, and we do it very well.
The whole process of setting up a captive, let's talk about that. Joanne, is setting up a captive expensive, time-consuming? Is it complicated? Explain what that process is like for the people.
So the insurance industry is very complex and a very heavily regulated industry. But with the assistance of very expert consultants, the process was very manageable. Absolutely, Dana's team were key to that. Their knowledge of the industry and their reasonableness, quite frankly, made it a process that was, you know, very logical, very coordinated, and not that time-consuming. The process itself, candidly, the part of the process that was time-consuming was the internal process, and that's because NLADA is itself a complex organization because it services a very broad community, so that's as it should be. And we made the choice to spend a dedicated amount of time to making sure that the board of directors really was fully informed and could exercise their fiduciary responsibility in making the decision very confidently and comfortably. And in terms of, was it expensive? The process to get the license, the application process itself, was not overly expensive. It was under $1,000. Was it more expensive to set up a captive than to continue with our old business model? Yes, of course. But and most of that expense was really hiring the experts to make sure that we were on the right track, to make sure that we were complying with all the laws and regulations, and that we were setting up the best model for the NLADA community, the equal justice community goals and their interests. And we fully expect to recoup every single penny that we spent setting up the captive and much, much more.
Would you say the captive has been successful in achieving the organization's overall goals?
Absolutely. It is very clear already that this model is going to allow us to better meet the needs of the equal justice community. For example, under previous models, there were limitations with respect to which jurisdictions that we could write policies in, or sometimes the limits on certain types of coverages that our members needed and which forced them to go to other insurers if we couldn't meet the requirements that they had. Now we have the ability to look at those decisions again and explore other options. It's been a relatively short period of time. We just started writing policies that became effective in January of this year, but I can tell you that our initial indicators are extraordinarily great, and that the NLADA community, the equal justice community, has really met this new business model. They've been very, very responsive, and it's been overwhelmingly positive.
In closing, I have a good question for the both of you, I think. As far as having advice for others, do you have any advice for people considering forming a captive insurance company in the nation's capital, in D.C.? Any advice for people in that situation?
You do need a dedicated team of professionals working with you, for sure. And I would say do your homework. Dana's team is going to thoroughly review your application, so make sure that you present a solid one, but that's as it should be, because that will help ensure your company's success. And then I would say, otherwise go for it, because it has been really beneficial to equal justice community, to the advocates, to NLADA, and most importantly to the clients that those individuals represent. So I thank you, Dana, for your partnership, and that's really what it feels like when you work with Dana's team, that they're invested in your success.
What do you think, Dana? What is advice that you might have for those considering forming a captive in the district?
Well, thank you for that question. First and foremost, a lot of companies and organizations don't understand what a captive insurance company is and what the benefits are. And oftentimes, if they go to their insurance broker, the broker will actually try to talk them out of forming a captive. So I always tell people, first, do your homework, as Joanne mentioned. Give us a call. We're always happy to talk to people, to explain the process, the benefits. There are some disadvantages as well, but you could contact us. Our information's on our website. It's disb.dc.gov, or you can call me on 202-727-8000. We're happy to talk to you. You also can talk to some consultants frequently. At least initial conversations are free. They're happy to talk to you to just kind of go over the nuts and bolts to see whether it makes sense to do a captive or not. And if it does, of course, you can retain those services, and you have to pay for that. But to just explore the opportunity, because there are very many opportunities and advantages associated with forming captives.
And as far as being in the nation's capital, I would imagine just the nature of being in this environment is a good place to be.
Yes, we've been doing this for a little over 20 years now, so we're very familiar with the process. We're among the leading jurisdictions, especially for captives. There are different types of captives. The types of captives that Joanne and her organization form in DC, we sort of specialize in those, so we have a lot of experience working with organizations. The District of Columbia is the home of many nonprofits and other associations, and so it's a perfect fit for local organizations to talk to us about setting up a captive, because we think we really add good value to that.
All right,
concept.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank today's guests, Dana Shepard, the Associate Commissioner for the District of Columbia, Department of Insurance, Securities and Banking's Risk Finance Bureau. Also, Joanne Wallace, the President, CEO, and Board Chair of NLADA Mutual Insurance Company for the Risk Retention Group. I'm your moderator, Nick Iannelli. For more on this discussion, visit WTOP.com and search DISB.